FUV Live, that was Fontaines D.C. in their first ever New York appearance. The tune is Boys in the Better Land. I got the front man, Grian chatting. Did I say that right, Grian?
That's it, yeah.
All right, and guitarist Connor Curley with live mics to chat.
Guitarist extraordinaire.
Yeah, and I love the interplay, Connor, between you and Carlos on that song.
Oh, yeah? Yeah, thank you very much. Taken a few years to hone in that kind of organized mess.
Yeah, you took the lead, in the bridge, and he was doing that slashing stuff, and there was some really nice in and out that would make Keith Richards and Mick Taylor proud, I think.
Thank you very much. That's Keith Richards is my favorite guitar player, so that's a really nice compliment.
All right. Let's introduce the rest of the band, the rhythm section.
Yeah, we have Tom Call on drums, we've got Connor Deegan on bass, and Carlos Ramos O'Connell. So it's a very, very Spanish name, kind of tail-ended by a very Irish name.
Yeah.
He's on the other guitar.
And that is worthy of Carlos, because he actually grew up in Spain.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. His mum's a dub, she's from Ireland, and his dad's a Madrid head, And so, yeah, he's got the best of both worlds.
But the rest of the crew from Ireland, as the Joyce reference in that song would suggest.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That song is it's less about kind of wanting to move, as much as it is about kind of having cultures, sold and marketed to you, and just kind of the idea of a better life in general. Like, it's not necessarily even about a place; it's kind of about a metaphysical place that exists within the head of the person who's being sold to. So it's kind of just about that smile that you see in a billboard that could never truly be yours, or that kind of relationship that's advertised to you between a father and son on a bank commercial that could never be yours. It's about that kind of distant place that never really exists in real life being sold to you, and that's but I mean, people pick it up how they will, and that's the way these things should be. They should be entirely subjective and opaque, and I shouldn't even be really explaining them, because I should be a completely distant entity from the art, But
well, it's a fine line, yeah. You want to maintain the space to let fans, listeners interpret, as you say, for themselves. But on the other hand, when you're sitting at a radio station and you have a chance to expound a little bit and maybe take a little peek behind the curtain, I know as a fan I love that. So appreciate the remarks.
Thanks very much, man. Cheers. It's one of those things that's it's so genuinely a vocation that it's very difficult to kind of and there's so much care gone into it as well that it's very difficult to not start gushing as soon as you start talking about it. So I find when I start talking about what these songs are about, or what any kind of song is about, and what any kind of piece of art is about, then it's very difficult for me to stop, because I have to chase it until I feel like I understand it. So I'm still doing that with my own stuff, my own lyrics and stuff.
And then that song also has a reference to radio.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the billboard. So is radio in that context another kind of media that is kind of pushing this, whether it be consumerism or these kind of false things that get pushed on us in capitalist economies?
Yeah, so the line is the radio is all about a runaway model, and I mean, obviously it's a sort of play on words, like runway model and runaway model.
Yeah.
But the idea that a runway model or a model or a model of anything, whether it be life or for clothes or for anything, the concept itself is run away from what it initially intended to be, and that's basically what it means.
You guys hung out at Dublin Music College, and that's where you met. Is that right?
Yeah, we met at a college called BIM in Dublin. And it was a good place to meet, and I think it's very immediate, like if you're in a room with a load of people who decided to do music, it's a lot easier to kind of get past all the niceties at the start, and you kind of delve into the deeper stuff a lot quicker. And then in our case, we kind of went down the route of reading a lot of poetry and kind of bonding over that. And that kind of bond is what made us go on to form the band in the first place,
Which poets did you find common ground with?
It initially started with Ginsberg and Burroughs and Kerouac, the three big beats, I suppose. But what initially drew us to that, I think, was the sort of like immediacy of it, but also the writing unedited and like living unedited and living to the full, and the sort of like quasi-religious aspect to Kerouac's writing that was like in order to sort of like fully worship this life or whatever entity they believe in. All you have to do is just kind of like live it to the full, you know. It's kind of like the same with like, you know, Hermann Hesse and Siddhartha and all of his writings, but basically about kind of like the spiritual life of living to the full. So we were very quick to kind of implement that into our own lives in the form of, you know, drinking excessively. And then we went from that to kind of more, I suppose, cryptic and you know, tied down and more considered sort of poetry, like Yeats became a massive one. And then around that time as well, we got into the Dubliners and the Pogues and stuff like that. So this whole sort of like obsession with Irish culture and where it is at this point in time came from all that. So we both, you know, accelerated the rate at which our friendship was growing, and also learned to really truly love Ireland and Irish things through poetry, you know. So it's very useful.
I just want to say that Patrick Kavanagh is in there as well. I just want to add that in as well.
Patrick Kavanagh, yeah.
He's a big one.
He's from the same town.
Oh, is that right?
He's from the same county, like the same area.
Do tell.
I'm from a place in Ireland called Monaghan, and I think I never, like, whenever you're younger, people always tell you that, like, oh, Patrick Kavanagh is from Monaghan, but like it wasn't until I actually started when I was older and I got into his stuff that it kind of made me walk around with a bit more kind of pride in where I was from. I kind of wanted to maybe run away from it a bit, but whenever I started reading his poems, especially like The Great Hunger, really changed my outlook on just changed my outlook on Ireland in general. He was a very, very big inspiration, and he was an absolute fool as well. Like, so.
Is that right?
Yeah, he was. Relate to that? Is that what you're saying?
Everyone can, you know. He who makes a beast out of himself and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I had the chance to speak with Mike Scott of the Waterboys about 6 years ago when he had that album, An Appointment with Mr. Yates.
Yeah.
You know, and he took all those, which was pretty spiffy.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's very difficult to read Yeats, you know, and connect with it and not have it influence you in some shape or form, even if you don't write, you know. Just in terms of like how you look at the world and how you internalize things and process them and stuff, you know. Because he's such a strong voice. It's like getting into Bob Dylan. You know, you have to be careful. I was told when I was getting into Bob Dylan, you have to be careful because he might take you over. Like, you know, he's almost too influential because he's too much himself and he's too full of conviction about himself and his own voice. And anyone who's very convinced of their own voice is very persuasive and very influential. You know.
What about the line between poetry and lyrics? Do all 5 members of the band write poetry, and did that translate into contributing to lyrics, or is there a primary songwriter who stepped up in that role?
We all write poetry. The lads they put together a poetry book like a few years ago. But for the band at the moment, Grian would write predominantly all the lyrics, and it would be his point of view, and except for maybe like one song and a few lines here and there. But writing for us personally doesn't have to be just for the band, you know. It accelerates other things, like it can feed into the way we play our instruments, and it's just a good way of kind of digging out emotions for general life, you know.
And is the collaborative book of poetry available?
It was just a small affair. It was like, I think we printed like 50 copies and we sold them for $5, and this is about 2 years ago. I think we did 2 books.
Just like sold them at gigs kind of a thing?
Well, like, it was before Carlos joined the band, wasn't it? So yeah, no, we never sold them at gigs. We just did one poetry reading, and we invited a few people. We put up flyers around the town, and then we threw some spare copies into bookshops. Just asked people to, you know, just give them out for free, you know. And then we did a poetry reading ourselves one night, and we sold our 50 copies, our modest 50 copies, and we considered ourselves poets for the evening.
Hey, sold out.
Yeah, exactly.
It's Eric Holland chatting with Grian and Connor of Fontaines D.C. Their album is Doggerel, the debut album. Do you consider yourself a punk band, or do you want to avoid the label? How do you feel about that?
So I don't really know how to answer it, because punk is obviously sort of like an abstract ethos, you know, that's present in the way people talk to each other, and the way people kind of just stand up for what they believe in, you know. I suppose it's in essence just going against the grain. So when we first began the band, we were fairly quick to call ourselves a punk band. Like, that was okay, you know. And then that changed to rock and roll, and now other people are calling us post-punk. But post-punk was around in the 80s, so this is kind of more like post-punk. So once you start saying post twice in a row, I think it's time to have a good look at yourself and stop trying to, you know. put a label on yourself, you know. So I don't know. We feel very free in what we do, you know. So it's kind of the idea of a label is a bit alien to us now at this point, you know. But you know, I just say to journalists, like, you know, feel free to call us whatever you want, because we're not writing these tunes for them anyway, you know.
Yeah, I think when we started in Dublin, there was like there was very few punk bands around, so it gave us more inspiration to kind of maybe start from that point of view of being a punk band, but then just our own musical inspirations maybe took the songs in different directions, and I think the freedom that we had to just let it go instead of trying to drag it back in and be like, no, this isn't punk anymore. You know, we let ourselves go, and that's what's in the songs now. Let whatever inspiration kind of take us where the songs needed to go.
The first notions of collaboration that Fontaines D.C. had was literary. What were your musical backgrounds coming in, and what albums or bands did you bond over?
It was probably garage rock and garage punk and stuff at the start. I think, like, whatever it was, it only happened when it was exclusively ours, you know, because anything that was just exclusively ours made it feel like a secret and made us feel like an institution and something that, you know, the world couldn't tamper with. So in the beginning, we were the only people that we knew that were into garage rock. So we became mates, and we hung out in this bar called the Garage Bar, which is where we met our manager. And so garage rock and the sound of garage rock and the sort of like the old sound of like drums and the way that they're produced and the simplicity of the songwriting and stuff like that all kind of fed into how we wanted to make music, you know, sort of a back to basics thing. And then it kind of went from that to more traditional Irish music. So there's largely a mix of that now. It'd be like Rolling Stones and the Pogues and Dubliners.
And the Stooges as well.
Yeah.
Like Raw Power would be a good example for me anyway as a guitar player of an album, like a sound that would be a big inspiration on me. It's just so everything's turned up to red, you know.
Right.
And the way that compresses is just, it's an incredibly emotive album, you know. Yeah, any more albums would you say?
Yeah, so like Rum Sodomy and the Lash by the Pogues was my go-to when I think about our band, you know, because it's timeless in a sense, but it's also very of its time. Like it's raucous, like, you know, and it's untethered. Like you feel like you could listen to that song 20 times or the album 20 times, and it could end differently on the 20th time because it's so live, and it could, you know, it's so live and unpredictable. You know what I mean? Like it's living, so it could finish differently. That's honestly how I feel about that album, like, you know. It's also literary and poetic, but at the same time, as I said, raucous and punk, you know.
Right.
And then there, like, I'm really into Sly and the Family Stone. Me and the lads are really into the Beach Boys. That'd be one of our biggest inspirations, and that's kind of weird, and I don't really know how that really influences us, you know. We're mad into harmonies and stuff, though.
Yeah, I think the second album is going to be, you know, Pet Sounds Part 2.
Well, that's a great one to hear, because that's certainly one that you wouldn't catch just listening to the band. You know, you would probably name some of the punk influences, but certainly not Beach Boys. So we'll see how that manifests in the future.
Yeah.
What do you want to play for us next?
I think we'll do Roy's tune next. That's Curley actually wrote most of the lyrics to this tune, so he's wrong in saying that I predominantly write all the lyrics. He's being modest. He wrote the lyrics for this tune. It's his idea and his concept.
Who's Roy?
Roy, funnily enough, is me. It's a nickname that was given to me, put on me. I don't know what the expression is there, but about like not even a year ago, I started wearing a lot of corduroy clothes, and one of my mates, James, started calling me Roy. So then whenever I started writing this song, it kind of maybe gave me a character to kind of base the whole, because it's a very, like, the lyrics are definitely like coming from a character, which it, like, would be me, but it's kind of, I think it's better to maybe disconnect yourself from things whenever you're writing lyrics like that. And the more we played the song, like, we didn't have a name for it, and the lads would just call it Roy's tune, so it just kind of fed in that way.
That one has the phrase "no future," which harkens back to the Sex Pistols. Was that an intentional touchstone?
I suppose these times are fairly bleak if you look at it certain ways. So yeah, the idea of no future was just kind of, I don't know, it was just about companies and jobs and people like living lives with no real lasting comfort, or I don't know. I think the feelings that inspired the tune might have been very similar to the feelings of discontent that Johnny Rotten might have been feeling whenever he wrote that lyric.
Yeah.
The debut album is Doggerel from Fontaines D.C. The D.C. is Dublin City. And I want to thank Connor and Grian here and the rest of the fellas for spending some time on FUV Live.
Thanks very much,
My
Eric.
absolute pleasure, man. Cheers.
Yeah,
Thanks
it was
very
nice
much.
to meet you.
And we will wrap up with Roy's tune, FUV Live.